Hello, welcome. I am the loud little ducky. We are going to talk about Kelly Dever's testimony. Don't call her Dever. It's Dever. She. I did not mean to hit that. So the defense called her. This is an adversarial witness. She probably could have been declared a hostile witness, not based on attitude, but based on her not really wanting to answer questions. Of course, they could have asked for that at sidebar, and Judge Beverly Cannoni could have denied it, and they just had to go ahead with it. But they called her for a reason, and I get the reason. But then you have her saying a bunch of things that weren't necessarily good for the defense, and you wonder which part of her testimony is going to sit with the jurors. Are they going to see her as trying to correct the truth and be honest, or are they going to see her as corrupt and now changing her stories? Are they going to think that the defense are mean and threatening people? Uh, I mean, it kind of gets explained. Also, if somebody has the basic understanding of law, they're going to know that defense can't charge you with anything, but um, sure, could they file a report to say, I would like you to charge this person with perjury? Yeah. But we know that if Karen Reed's defense team tried to get Michael Morrissey or Adam Lally or any of those people to charge one of their own, that it's not happening. So she, to me, had no reason to be afraid of it. One, she's a cop. She knows better. But two, she's one of their own. And this whole case is about protecting one of their own. So I think she just got up there, had an attitude, and said what she wanted to say and was going to make sure that she at least, said some hurtful things for the defense. What part will win at the end of the day with this jury as far as her testimony goes? Who knows? But let's get into it. So Alan Jackson calls her. She was never interviewed, even though she is the one that was working dispatch the day that the call came in. She didn't take the 911 call, but she worked dispatch afterwards. She did speak to Gallagher, who, if you remember, is the one that said the red Solo cups hold liquid terrifically. That phone call is out there. I know it is on Twitter, where he's trying to confirm the address and stuff like that. She did talk to him, but she was never interviewed about any calls and things that she took on this case. They found the dispatcher unimportant, but she never was interviewed, never wrote reports. And then the FBI, the feds, interviewed her August 9th of 2023. So over a year later, almost 2 years later, interviewed Dever. And she worked the overnight shift. And she knew that police were responding to somebody unresponsive in a snowbank. Sergeant Good told her to work dispatch. When she got the call, she was already pulled into Canton Police Department. And then she says she didn't know Brian Albert. She does know Chris Albert. She knew Higgins because he had an office, and obviously she knew her chief, her boss, um, Kenny Berkowitz. Oh, that might be causing a weird noise from me shaking my leg. I am so sorry. There was screens in the dispatch room, like where the calls come in, and then also in that control center, there are screens that show the security footage. Like, this is the control room. She doesn't know what was on those screens, where those screens were, because this happened, like, 2.5, 3 years ago, and nobody talked to her until, like, 2023, so she just doesn't remember. She's no longer at Canton PD. She ended up going to Boston and got a 67% raise by going to Boston Police Department, which was John O'Keefe's police department and Brian Albert's police department. And she got a huge raise going over there. She has not been a cop for very long. I want to say 5 years total, some at Canton PD and now some at Boston PD. Uh, she's just a patrol person. She wasn't sure. She knows that there's cameras at the police station or at least in the Sally Port because she's seen footage from the media, but she doesn't remember it from her being in the dispatch, which, like, she acts like she's never worked dispatch before, and I find that hard to believe. Um, she says she doesn't know why she's here at this trial. The defense talked to her a year ago before the first trial, and now she's here, but she has no idea what she has to offer. You know why you're here. You may think it's not important, but you know why you're here. She says she has no relation to this case. Well, the feds thought you had some relation to this case and they talked to you and you gave information about this case. You also were working dispatch the day of this case and talked to officers when they were working on the scene or trying to find the scene. So, yeah, you have information to this case, whether you think so or not. Um, she she just has a horrible attitude, and she worked overnight shift, but she stayed over for overtime. Um, I don't know if she was already gonna work overtime or if she was staying because everybody else was at the scene and they needed her to stay. That wasn't made clear. Um, she says that Alan Jackson asks her about a statement that she made to the feds. She says, "I can't make that statement you want me to make on the stand because that would be a lie, I'm told." She says she had a distorted memory. She's like, "It's," and Alan Jackson says, "Well, it's, a crime to lie to that other agency, the FBI, the feds, it's a crime to lie to them." And she's like, "Well, I had no malicious intent when I said that. Like, I made that in good faith. I thought that's what I saw, but I couldn't have seen it because of the timeline." Okay. And she said she spoke with her legal team or their legal team, in a willing conversation. It showed she had a false memory. She thought it was real, but it turns out it wasn't real. So she retracted her statement she made to the feds. And that statement was that Higgins and Berkowitz go into the Sally Port for a wildly long time. with Karen Reed's SUV. And that was her statement. But that's a false memory. She just made that up. She couldn't have seen that. And the thing is it might be false as to what day she saw it. I would like to know if she worked anywhere between did she work the evening of the 29th? Because her shift was the 28th. The thing is, if she saw that the evening of the 29th, it's not a lie because by the 29th, that vehicle was there. If she said she saw it on the 28th, okay, maybe she didn't see it on the 28th, but she could have seen it on the 29th. She could have seen it on the 30th, the 31st. She could have seen it any of those times. I don't know about the first because I don't know what time the Bodhi Lab tech person came in, Marie Hartnett, but she could have seen it on other any of those other days, 29th, 30th, or 31st. So she might be wrong about the day she saw it if she thinks that she saw it on the 28th. But if she saw it on the 29th, it's not a false memory because the vehicle was there the 29th after a certain time. Anytime after 5:30, and if she's on the overnight shift, it could have gone into that evening shift of the 29th going into the 30th. I don't know what her schedule was. Now she can say, "Oh, I left at 3:45 or my shift ended at 3:45 on the 29th." She worked 28th into the 29th. So, okay, if you left at 3:45, I'd like to know if your time card says that or if you're like, just that's when the shift ended. But okay, maybe it wasn't that day you said. But the fact that your memory is so specific about who, what vehicle it was, who it belonged to, and that they were in there for a wildly long time alone with the vehicle, and you thought that was weird. That is too detailed to be a false memory. So you just make things up in your head. Like anybody that ever gets pulled over or has to face her in court and be like, "Don't you just make up things? Don't you have a lot of false memories? Like you think you saw this, but you didn't really. Isn't that what you did in another trial? So how can we believe that this isn't a false memory you conjured up to write me a ticket?" You know? Like she's worthless now as a police officer. Um, Interestingly enough, she changed her story after the defense had talked to her and after she spoke with commissioners at Boston PD, where she now works. The commissioner, the head hoobadoo, called her up as a rookie and wanted to talk to her about her testimony in this case. And supposedly they said, "We support you. Do the right thing or tell the truth or whatever, maybe a wink and a nod, your job depends on this um, type behavior." And then all of a sudden, it's a false memory after you've been talked to by law enforcement people. And then you have to contact the feds and be like, "Am I gonna get in trouble because this was something wrong that I stated something wrong?" And they told her, "No, you don't have to worry about it because it wasn't malicious." And AJ's like, "Malicious? Why do you say malicious? I didn't say malicious." Um, regardless of anything she says, they support her. She got a lawyer to meet with the feds. Um She never talked about her testimony in detail with the commissioner, she says. They just said, "Okay, we're supporting you when you testify and, do the right thing or just get up there and tell the truth or whatever." Like, but they didn't talk about you need to say this or they didn't tell her what to say supposedly. Um, then and also they've never talked to her about her testimony in any other case that she's testifying. She's like, "Well, this is a unique case." But um she said she did feel threatened um, by the defense because the defense told her they were going to charge her with perjury, which is not how any of it works. And she knows that. She thinks the defense wanted her to lie, which the defense didn't want her to get up here and lie and say, "You for sure saw this." They just wanted you to get up there and say, "This is what you told the feds," which is what she told the feds. She admitted, "That is what I told them." They didn't say, "Come in here," and they just wanted to know what you told the feds. That is not them asking you to lie. "Isn't this what you told them?" Yeah, the prosecution can get up there and say, "But you found out later that this wasn't true because the timeline didn't match." Okay. So do we believe that she just accidentally had this memory and she didn't actually see what she saw? Or do we think she saw what she saw? It was just maybe on a different day than she originally thought. Um, she said that her job depends on what she says on the witness stand, but um, and that she cannot lie on the stand, and that she is just here to tell the truth. Um, there was a bunch of multiple recrosses and redirects and all that stuff. She she has known Sarah Levinson since middle school, which if she's known Levinson, I don't know how she doesn't know Brian Albert Jr. or Julie Nagel or any of them because they're all about the same age and went to school together. So, but she just may be close with Sarah Levinson and not the other people. Um, and she had said that the defense has conspiracy theories. And that's when this conspiracy, like, this is just a part of the conspiracy theories. Um, which might have been interesting last trial because that was where the focus was on the last trial. This trial isn't so much focused on the conspiracy theory. Yeah, there's a little bit of the bias and how did that glass get on the bumper and stuff like that, and there's no collision. But there hasn't been a talk about this huge conspiracy theory about all these different people and things like that. And so she was interesting. If you want to go watch her testimony, I will leave a link to where you can go see that testimony with, um, I'm gonna do the trial channels link, because they have it without all, like, the sidebars and things like that. It's just basically straight her testimony. But definitely go check that one out because she's an interesting character, and she was not a favorable witness for the defense. That's gonna be it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.